Welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. No one is beyond help. No one is beyond hope.
As we have always said, we are bringing you medical information and cutting-edge science, but none of this is medical advice. Please seek out input from your own doctor.
Hello and welcome to the Low Carb MD podcast. Today is a very special day. I'm really excited. I was up 2 hours ago, Tro, because I didn't want to sleep in past this one. Tro makes me wake up at 5 in the morning, so I got up at 4 to make sure I was ready. Tro, how are you doing, man?
Listen, I'm so excited for today. Because we're meeting a better half, okay? Somebody who I've connected with on Twitter, and I just feel like even though she's across the pond, okay, I feel like we're saying the same thing, doing the same thing, just 2,000 miles apart. And her and her husband have been such personal inspirations for me. Both of their work individually and together has been such a personal inspiration for me. I can't tell you how excited I am right now. I feel like I'm like fanboying right now. That's what's happening. I'm fanboying, you know?
Yeah, Dr. Jen Unwin, thank you so much for joining us. We love your husband. When we had him on, my kids, he said, no one's going to want to listen to me for an hour. And my kids were like, we love him. Have him on again. We love it. They loved every second. And both of you have that same spirit of hope. But thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. I'm blushing. Yeah, it's great to connect in person, isn't it? Even though we're not actually with each other. It's just nice to have a longer chat, really, and just to explore some of these ideas, and as you say, keep spreading the hope.
Yeah, and that's so important. I want to read one tweet. I woke up this morning early and I looked at Twitter, as is my habit. I'm trying to break. But here's the first tweet I saw this morning from EPW. I want to give a shout out to him. Great guy. And I've seen he's doing a lot of great work and he's changed his life. But he says, Dr. Tro and Brian Lenskes gave me hope and comfort at a vulnerable time in my life when I was obese and pre-diabetic. I had just started my LCHF and intermittent fasting journey back to health, but I was afraid and unsure. Low Carb MD podcast gave me hope. I was inspired. Thank you. And I was like, wow, that's what we're here for. That's why we do this thing, right?
So special, isn't it? You know, if occasionally people message you on Twitter, don't they? You guys will have it as well. And it's not even someone you've spoken to individually, but they've somehow seen something that you've done or watched a lecture or anything. I don't know how they've sort of picked up something that's made a difference in their lives. And it's just so brilliant. It just keeps you going, doesn't it? Through all the other difficulties, I think it just inspires us all to keep going. We know it works. We've seen people's lives absolutely transformed, and there's no magic like that. There's nothing like that.
You know, I want to stop. We had some topics we were going to discuss, and I know Brian surely wants to take this in a positive direction, but it's not just we're spreading hope. We're doing it at an immense personal sacrifice. Okay. And I saw a recent article, and I hate to bring this up. Okay. I hate to bring this up, Brian, but it is those people that say, you have changed our lives, you've helped us, you inspired us, right? That keeps us going. Mm-hmm. But there's another side of it. I mean, you and your husband have worked really hard to get these spoon infographics, accepted. Yeah. And then lo and behold, you are under intense scrutiny. They've been withdrawn. And this message that we're preaching, it attracts a lot of enemies. Mm-hmm. And, and other interests come around and literally undo all the work that we do. People don't understand that there is intense personal hardship with doing what we're doing.
Yeah.
Can you talk about that intense, before we get into the hope and the social connection, I think people don't appreciate that.
It's really worth thinking about. So when we first started this, we were beautiful innocents. I don't know about you guys, but I came across this whole thing. I'm like you, Tro. I'm a personal serial struggler all my life with kind of weight and eating issues. And one January, I was just in the supermarket, and in the bargain bin there was this book by Dr. John Briffer called Escape the Diet Trap, and it just really called to me, obviously, because that was something I really wanted to do in life. My hope in life was to escape the diet trap. So I thought, I'm going to buy that book. Bought the book, read it, and basically he's a GP in the UK. He's not really in the space now, but it was basically low carb. And like an innocent, I read the book, did it myself, felt amazing, started reading bits out to David. And at the same time, he was, people will have maybe watched some of the talks we've done. He was really he was a burnt out provincial GP, fed up with people not being able to help people, getting sicker, adding more medications, nothing helped. So we'd never worked together either. No, obviously we worked in the same town. I was working in the psychology department and he was working in his practice, and we just had a conversation about, maybe before he retired, doing something that he'd really like to do from his heart, and he wanted to make a difference for people with type 2 and obesity and other conditions, a real difference. And I said, well, why don't we work together? Because I'd done a lot of work, obviously, on hope and motivation and group work I absolutely loved. And I thought, well, that's going to fit really well in this sort of long-term, working with people long-term. And, we just basically took these scientific ideas out of John Briffer's book and some other things that we read. We just dove straight in. And we were just absolutely amazed at the results, which obviously are still being published. And hopefully there's a paper just submitted now. We've been doing it for 8 years. So the latest figures have just been submitted to BMJ Nutrition. So they're just under review. Hopefully that'll come out soon. And as I say, we were sweet innocents. So we didn't know the impact it was going to have on people, which was absolutely massive. But we also didn't know there was anything controversial in what we were doing at all until we told the dietitian in the practice what we were going to do, and she walked out and never came back. That was the first indication that we were doing something that wasn't conventional or kind of seen as usual. But the results spoke for themselves, so we kind of carried on. So yes, we get all the good stuff from helping people, making a difference. As you say, that's what keeps you going. Yes, amazingly, we still sit around and puzzle, David and I, of an evening. What is it that people don't like about the results? What is it that people don't like about people reversing their diabetes and getting well? We still don't quite get all the kind of ill feeling that comes our way. And then, as you say, recently, so what's happened was as a way of explaining in a simple way to people the hidden sugar. So everybody understands about sugar in cake, sugar that you add in your tea, sugar in Coca-Cola. Everybody gets that. So when you say cut down sugar, they understand that. Not everybody could really grasp the idea of the sugars that were sort of glucose molecules holding hands in starch, as David likes to sort of say it. So he went away and really puzzled for a long time. I still don't understand it, but he can now explain the glycemic index and the glycemic load, and how you can calculate an equivalent number of teaspoons of sugar that are in any food, because everybody understands a teaspoon of sugar, and visually it's dead easy to understand. And then he produced his infographics, and they're still available. They're actually, nobody's ever questioned the calculation. So even NICE, the National Institute of Clinical Excellence, who previously endorsed them, they still recognise that the calculations are absolutely correct. There's no criticism of the science or the facts or the calculation. And they're still available on the Public Health Collaboration website, so we can perhaps give people the link to that. They can download them. They're in loads of languages now, and if anybody goes on and they speak a language they don't see that the sugar infographics are in, they can offer to translate them for us. Yes, so yeah, it was just unfortunate that.
And what happened? I'm just gonna. Yeah, it was essentially a hit piece on in a fringe kind of newspaper that looped in.
Sadly, not fringe. Sadly,
Yeah.
not Fringe. A big distribution newspaper, the Mail on Sunday.
Well, they're Fringe now.
Yeah, they're Fringe now.
They are in our world.
And what they did was they got an ex-Olympiad and they put CGMs on and showed that there's a slight difference between CGMs, which we know.
By the way.
What's that?
So she was, I think she was a pre-diabetic, and the other guy, the journalist, is not a diabetic. So the other thing is that the sugar infographic resources were really linked to the type 2 diabetes guideline. So their information for people with type 2, neither of these people had type 2. They compared eating one morning a banana and the other morning 6 teaspoons of sugar, which is the equivalent, and said that the blood sugar raises weren't exactly the same, which of course they were. Yeah. But they were pretty impressive, and if I'd had those blood sugar spikes, I would have been a little bit concerned.
Yes. You know, it's funny. And then, but not only that, this journalist who also quoted somebody who a prominent physician who has ties to industry, and particularly the shakes and soups industry, which now, lo and behold, 1 or 2 months later, the NHS is supporting, right? So help me understand this, because to me, I got a conspiratorial mind. I'm like, this is literally a hit piece from people who sell shakes and soups, and it's using an arbitrary difference in CGM measurements, a minimal difference, in my opinion, and sensationalizing it to discredit you and promote shakes. That's what it looks like to me. Am I crazy? Why should I have a tinfoil hat on? Or
they found I think it was three professors and one of the dietitians from Diabetes UK, who are what can we say? They take a lot of sponsorship from food industry. And pharma. Yeah. So as I say, we started out as innocents. I was not a conspiracy theorist kind of person at all, but I must say that the longer I'm in it, the more I see that kind of thing must be the explanation, because I can't find any other explanation for why people would attack somebody whose results, let's face it, actually I think we can say they're actually better than the direct trial, because we don't exclude over 65s. We don't exclude people who've had type 2 for longer than, I think it's 3 years they exclude them, or people who've got HbA1c's over a certain level. Everybody's included in our results, and they've only published up to 2-year data, haven't they now, for remission. We've got a much bigger cohort. Theirs wasn't even an RCT either, and the remission data are much better at our 3 years than they were at their 2 years. I think I'm correct in all of that. I don't want to say too much wrong, but
well, I'll tell you what, the genie's out of the bottle. Every single day of my career right now, your infographics I use with all my patients, I show them insulin, and I show them, I show it to them, and it's like, oh my gosh, I show them, here's a cup of rice, how much sugar is in it, and everyone's stunned. Brown bread, white bread. I mean, what you have done is absolutely brilliant, and you're saving lives. Whether the experts, so-called experts, I'll put quotes around it, agree or not, we have clinical data and we have outcomes, and that's what's important. Tro, do you want to, I think in fairness, we should tell all of our sponsors that we have.
Oh, my sponsors? Let's see. Well, my wife, look, I've gotten no money from my wife, but my wife owns a company that takes almond flour and sweetener and makes it into cookies. So I have to disclose that. Okay.
Other than that, Tro, we have no vested interest, and that's why,
we haven't.
That's why it's beautiful when you say that. Right.
We've really made that a fundamental. So we don't. Neither David or I receive any money. We've done the work for free. The sugar addiction work I do for a donation to the Public Health Collaboration. I mean, we're lucky enough to be in that position, but we want to not be compromised in any way, or people be able to say, because they often do say, oh, you're doing it to sell a book or whatever it is. No.
This episode is really about hope, and the hope is that wise people can look and say, why is this? Why is it when I talk about you know, one of my patients or someone we had on the podcast loses 200 pounds. He gets attacked by people saying, you're doing it the wrong way. So the guy's lost 200 pounds, show him some respect, give him a break here. And you see these nasty people come out and you think, well, how can that be when someone, I don't care what someone does. If they've lost 200 pounds and their life's better and they're happy and they're joyful, I'm going to say, hey, good. I don't necessarily agree with you, but cool. But I'm not even going to comment. But why is it that these people feel so, I don't know how many people are paid by industry or whether it's PR firms or what it is to stir up controversy. Speaking of, excuse me, we have wildfires here, so I'm losing my voice. But controversy, I said the power of hope, and I had a 3-day Twitter like disaster, like people just going crazy because I had the audacity to talk about hope in a time like this. So you are the expert on hope, so that's what I want to hear about, you know, because this is what we need right now. And really, and just to bring it personal, a good friend of mine's son, his best friend is on a ventilator right now, attempted suicide, took 3 bottles of sleeping pills because he lost all hope. Why? And you look at it, it's like, this kid has all the potential in the world, bright kid, straight A student, athlete, and he's on a ventilator right now and probably not going to make it. And they say, he lost all hope. So when someone tries to give people hope, they'll say, well, you're giving false hope. And you hear all this negativity on trying to give people hope. And that's what we're here for, really. So I consider you and your husband the experts, and that you're who I look to. So how do you answer these questions?
Oh, it's such a big topic, isn't it? Hope so fundamental. I think it's it's kind of it's underneath certainly all helping relationships. So really every doctor and practitioner and clinician needs to understand that people come to you hoping for something, okay? And what's hope about? Hope is about it's about believing in a better future, isn't it? So that poor young man, obviously he'd lost all belief that there could be a better future, or that he could find a way there. And I think this really applies to anybody with any long-term health conditions as well, and obesity and type 2 and so on. For so long people have not had any hope that things can be any different. It's more that they sort of had to live with whatever it was. So hope is about believing in a better future, and then it's about believing that you can, you know, knowing the steps to get there and knowing that you've got the personal ability, capacity, motivation, whatever it is, to take those steps. And when we can enhance all of those things, then people start moving forwards. And of course, it is all about, we can't make the changes for them. It is all about enhancing their hope, their idea of their own confidence. And, you know, maybe we can sort of gently point them in the right direction, but they actually have to take those steps. And it makes such a massive difference in medical settings that people who are more hopeful do better in every kind of thing that you might measure. So people who are more hopeful take less medication, they consult less often, they complain of fewer symptoms, they even live longer. So if you look at the research on kind of hope, well-being, happiness, people with higher levels of those things do better on all those metrics and even live longer. So it's not just a kind of, I think people often think of hope, oh, it's a bit airy fairy, what do we do with it, you know? But it does affect these hard outcomes, and there are simple things that you can do in clinic, and this is what we've kind of learned together really over the last 8 years. So it's, how did I bring, psychology is always a bit complicated, isn't it? Or, you know, you listen to a psychologist speak and you think, yes, but how would I implement that in clinic? Or some of the ideas are quite complex and a bit kind of a bit woolly perhaps for people. And I think medics like things bing bang bosh, they just want it like, what do I actually say, what do I actually do? So that's what we've been working on together, because I've been trying to help David implement these ideas in his practice. He has 10-minute appointments in primary care, which isn't a lot of time to get to grips with people's, you know, psychology basically. But these ideas come from positive psychology. They come from an approach that I was trained in, which is solution focused brief practice, which started in the States actually as a form of family therapy, but can be used in other settings. And we've used these ideas and integrated them into this model that you guys have probably seen us talk about, which I just called GRIN, which is a simple way of remembering what the 4 stages are. Do you want me to say a bit more about that?
Yeah, absolutely. And we'll put a link to it also.
Yeah, it's an open access paper, so people can just go ahead and download and share. And also there's a couple of videos. I think the one we did in Denver, not this year obviously, but last year we did a little role play, and so people can get an idea of how it goes. So the most important, the sort of fundamental thing is G for goals. Or when I say goals, what I really mean is hope, what people's best hopes are. So the best opener when you meet with someone is, what are your best hopes for us working together? Or I often say, you know, in 6 months' time, you're looking back and you're telling someone about your journey and you're saying, I'm so glad I connected with, say, Jen, I'm so glad I connected with you that day, because all of these things are better in my life now. All of these things are different now. And just get a sense of, well, what would that be like? You have to spend a little bit of time on that, because often if people have got really hopeless, they've stopped thinking about a better future. They can hardly bear to think about it because they're just trying to get through the kind of the here and now. But you know, just getting a simple sense. And people often say things like, well, they might talk about weight loss, so they might say I'd have lost 3 stone or you know, a certain number of kilograms. It's important to kind of dig below that and say, well, what difference would that make, actually sort of difference in your life? Because we can all weigh less and still have lives that aren't fulfilling. You know, it's not like, you know, we get a nose job and life's transformed, or we lose 3 stone and life's transformed. What would you be doing differently if you'd lost that weight? And then you find out a lot about the person, because they'll say something like, I could play with my grandchildren, you know, I could maybe apply for this job that I wanted, but I wouldn't be physically capable of doing at the moment, or whatever it is that would be something that was sort of really important to them and really in line with their values. So getting a real sense of that and getting them to describe it. And that's the future pull. When someone's described their preferred future, the minute they've imagined it or pictured it in their minds, the magic starts. They've kind of begun to think that that's a possibility. So they're kind of going into possibility land, as we say. So that's G for goals. And then the next step is really about looking what's already there, that's already working. And we call that R for resources, but that really means like, what are their personal strengths? Are they an organized person? Are they a determined person? Are they, have they got people around supporting them? Who is around supporting them? What successes have they had in the past? Have they lost weight, as you say, however they've done it? How have they done that in the past? What's worked? Are they maybe already doing some exercise or something else which will kind of, you know, what is it that they're already doing which is congruent with that goal? And a way of finding out about that is also, you say, well, 10 out of 10 is your goal. You know, 10 out of 10 is the kind of miracle where you've got this job that you really wanted, and 0 out of 10 is either where we are now or the worst you've been. Where are you today? And lots of people don't say 0. Lots of people will, some people do, and there's ways of dealing with that, but lots of people will say, oh, I'm probably a 2. And then that allows you to really explore what the 2's about, you know, what's already going well, you know. So they might say, well, I've already lost a little bit of weight, or I've joined the gym and I'm already doing so much a day, or I've started taking my lunches to work, whatever it is that's already good. And so that's goals and resources, GR. So I is the next stage, and that stands for increments. And this is about this whole idea that a journey involves lots of tiny steps and habits that you're building to get to this new life. So increments would be, well, okay, so you're already a 2. What might be happening if you were 2.5, or what would it look like if you were 2.5? And you'll notice that I don't say you have to do X to get to 2.5, or what are you going to do to get to 2.5? So it's much more kind of getting them to imagine 2.5 as a little, it's the next little miracle, if you like. So the person might say, yeah, I'd be, yeah, maybe they'd given up having dessert after dinner, or whatever they generate, they will be able to do, because they've said it. So they've already imagined themselves doing it, so they can do it. So that's I for increments is the next little step. And then N is for noticing, and this is really important, and I'd encourage any practitioners to really incorporate this in what they do, to notice what's working. We're all trained, both as patients and practitioners, to notice the problem, what's not working, how bad's the pain, how depressed were you last week. So it's a sort of mind shift into solution focused thinking and solution finding and noticing what's working, because you need to be able to do more of that. So encouraging the person to ask when they're having a good day, what's working, what's going well, drop the rest, carry on doing that. So we've had patients who said, when I went to see so-and-so practitioner, I'd lost 3 kilos and they didn't even mention it. So if you notice something, really shine a light on it. That's progress. How did you do that? Keep going with that. Wow, you came today without your stick. You're looking out as a practitioner for signs that there's improvement. How did you do that? Encouraging the person to notice, as I say, what's working, what sits well with them. And so that's GRIN, goals, resources, increments, noticing. Just keep going round and repeating that ad infinitum. I mean, that's what we do in the groups as well. And it's also a good model, I think, for ourselves. It's that we have these sort of slightly weird conversations here at home, or sometimes if I'm thinking about, say I was thinking about coming on today, I'd be thinking about, well, if I was looking back and that had gone really well and I was really pleased with the things that I managed to get over, what would I have been talking about? So you can have those sorts of, you could ask yourselves the kinds of questions that they're all listed in the paper, by the way, so people can have a look at the kinds of questions. But
sort of like anticipating success, right? How do you anticipate, or even anticipating adversity, right? It helps you prepare for it. I love that. I absolutely love that.
So you might say, so we do this with the group. Christmas is coming up. I don't know about in your practice, but Christmas is always the big the big nightmare when people fall off the wagon.
We have Thanksgiving too, so we got a double.
Yeah, it's a universal problem. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have a conversation about, right, okay, Christmas is coming up. How would we like, looking back on it, how would we like to have managed it? Maybe there's some things that worked well last time. Maybe there's some things that didn't work so well. What would you like to do differently? What would you be pleased to notice about yourself if you got through Christmas, and blah blah blah. So there's all those kinds of questions where absolutely you can anticipate. They do it in sports, don't they, all the time? This kind of, you're actually imagining yourself winning the gold medal. Really, it actually makes a massive. Tim Noakes talks about it, doesn't he? He talks about getting the teams to kind of imagine that success and then behaving as if they are the winning team.
Yeah, visualizing that and seeing it. Yeah, thinking positive. And that brings up a topic that I've really noticed a lot lately, especially in the last couple of weeks. Some of the patients I notice are so focused on their weight, and they weigh themselves a bunch of times every day, and they're so tense and so stressed and so worried. It's kind of like when we were trying to have our first baby, and my wife was so like looking at the clock, chiming. I'm like, look, just relax, it'll be fine, right? But so many people, they're so focused, and those are the people who lose the least amount of weight, I find. Really. And because they're so focused, and they're looking at just relax and trust the process. And the people who don't care, they just kill it. They lose tons of weight really quickly, and they're like doing great, and they're not even worried about it. But I think it's that stress and that tension, right? Yeah,
and also so paying attention to, well, like I say, sort of what's the, once you've lost the weight, what's that like? It's about building that new life, isn't it? Yes, because the weight and the eating is really restricting, and because of that kind of addictive piece as well, we're tending the reward center gets so focused on the food. How do we help people to build a life beyond that obsession with food and weight? So what would I be doing if I was not obsessed with food and weight? What would my life look like? And I think then helping people to build, well, whatever job they'd be doing or whatever they'd be doing in their spare time that didn't involve food, and helping people to build that. And that's this kind of that's the relapse prevention piece, isn't it, which is that stuff that stops you falling back. It's like Rob Savage says, isn't it, that you've got to have those other things in your life so that you're not just turning to food, which is what's happened to a lot of our patients, is that they've just become so obsessed with the food and the weight.
Can I turn it around? Let's just take it pragmatically, Brian, right? And Dr. Unwin, you have a patient who's focusing on what they're restricting, or maybe focusing on the number on the scale. What are they losing out on, right? They are losing out on a lot. They are losing out on personal growth. Why am I hungry? What foods are making me full? What foods are making me more hungry? Right? Mm-hmm. They are, in fact, by focusing on that number, they're shooting themselves on the foot by focusing on the foods that they're restricting, and kind of just having that intense focus. You know, it's not just that they need to relax. It's not only do they need to relax, Brian, but what are you actually missing out on?
Well, I think part of it, Tro, too, is enjoying the journey. When I go on a hike, I stop and look around. I look at the birds. I don't just think, oh, when I get to the top, I'm gonna be happy. Like, I'm gonna enjoy the journey. So look back and see where you've come from. So many people, they'll say, look, I haven't lost a pound in a week. Yeah, but you lost 12 pounds in the 2 weeks before that. Relax. But it's that it's saying, I want to get, instead of saying, look, our goal is metabolic health. I really don't care about the weight loss. I don't care if someone puts on 30 pounds of muscle. I don't care. That's just a number on the scale. You're metabolically getting healthier. So I have a lady, she's dropped 2 pounds maybe, but it's all visceral fat. Her insulin level dropped in half. Her arthritis is gone. Heartburn's gone. She's sleeping better. She's less anxious. And she's like, this is frustrating. I'm like, you're feeling great. You're feeling great. How could this possibly be frustrating? Trust the process. And that's what I get, it's hard because you want to like say, look at all the good that's happening. So I think this thing of hope, where some people think, I'm just going to gain the weight back anyways. They have this in their brain, and it's a self-defeating, because why? It's because of life experience, because we've all done it. We've all lost weight and gained it back. And all of a sudden you struggle all this time, and then all of a sudden you've gained 30 pounds back. I've done it myself. Tro, I know you've done that. And so it's getting in the battle of saying, okay, I can do this. Like someone encouraging you, like what you're doing is so critical.
So I think that, there's two things there. There's one is, you're not going to this is magical thinking about, if I lose 2 stone, I'll be happy, which is kind of magical thinking, isn't it? Along the lines of plastic, if I have my ears done, I'll be happy. Or it might be part of the story, but it's not the whole story. And the other thing is that, exactly as you say, so in our data, interestingly, improvements in HbA1c are not related to weight. It's just not correlated. So we've got people who've not lost any weight who've reversed their diabetes, and we've got people who've lost quite a bit of weight, but so those two measurements don't actually correlate. So interesting. So that's another hopeful piece for people, is that the other things are improving. That's why it's good to measure a number of things, or to measure what's important to the person. So I think you'll have seen David's graphs of the week, and the patients love the graphs, either of waist circumference or HbA1c. It's another way of kind of noticing progress. Or they come to group with their old trousers, and they kind of put them on and show the rest of the grass. This is where my skirt used to be. It's kind of out here, and that gives hope to other people as well. The fact that they can see other people who are like them earlier, further down the path, who are having great success by changing these particular behaviors. And that's the power of the group right there. The group is a whole nother level of hope, because you see other people's success and you identify with them because they're like you, they live next door, same age, same culture, and they see these people, lost. I mean, you've got the same. We've got people got someone who's lost 9 stone, was in a wheelchair, now walks into the room, and it's just such an inspiration to everybody else.
Imagine being in that room. Yeah. Imagine being in that room. I'm getting goosebumps just imagining that room. I want to talk about this social aspect, and I want to bring up 2 key studies that I've seen, and I want to get your take on it. A study that was just recently published showed that loneliness was actually associated with the incidence of diabetes, meaning like the more lonely you are, the more diabetes you develop. Okay. And not only is it the more diabetes you develop, the worse your diabetes gets. Loneliness. Okay.
Yeah.
And I want to juxtapose that to obesity and diabetes actually spread in social networks. We looked at the NHANES data and we looked at how obesity spreads. And so by the end of the Framingham study, there was these small clusters of thin people, non-obese people, and the obesity had spread over 50 years like a virus, literally like a virus. So here we are, we have two key things that people need to understand: lack of hope, loneliness, you're going to get diabetes. If you have the wrong social network, you're going to get diabetes. And I don't think people realize the importance of, you need to change. Not only do you need to change, but you need to evangelize the world around you. If you're in a home with your diabetic sister or mother or son or whatever it is, it's not going to work if they're eating a certain way and you're eating a certain way, or it's going to be hard.
It's really hard.
It's going to be hard.
Yeah.
So I've found that we have to be that social network. And Sue Wolver talked about this. I know you loved her. We have to become that social network. We have to make those social networks.
Yes.
So what's your thought on like the social aspect of weight loss and diabetes reversal?
Incredibly powerful. And as Joan Iflin says, we're kind of we've got these mirror neurons, haven't we? We're tribal animals at the end of the day. That's how we evolve. So we watch what the tribe does and we mimic it. So if our tribe is which mine was, my family of origin, kind of all about desserts and food is love and everything's celebrated with, you're happy, you have a cake, sad, you have a cake, and that's something that then gets, as you say, replicated socially. So we're kind of programmed to mirror the people around us. So we have to be a different tribe that they can join. And I think that's why there's all this kind of love between everyone on Twitter and social media, because people identify that they have to be in a new tribe, and so they like to connect to people. That's why the groups are so powerful, because that's again some more kind of social validation that this isn't such a weird thing to do. Other people like me are doing it. So the social networking. We always invite whoever's in the house who's doing the cooking or is closest, so we've had kind of moms and 3 daughters come, or, we're not just working with that one person. We try and get everybody to the group. Can
I say one thing about I just got into a little discussion about the Lyon heart study, which I don't know if you've ever looked at it, but I got into a discussion about it. And it was a study that looked at the Mediterranean diet, and it was actually a compelling study. A lot of plant-based doctors often point to this to say, look, we need to move away from meats and we need to adopt a Mediterranean style diet. And if you look at the intervention in that study, do you know what they did? They had dietitians meet with the entire family on how to, and you know what they found? They met with the entire family. They found that the entire family, got healthier. The patients that were in that intervention smoked less, statistically significant drop in smoking, statistically significant drop in alcohol, and they lived longer. And they credited it to the Mediterranean diet and reducing saturated fat and increasing polyunsaturated fat. So hearing this, what do you think? Do you think that it's the dietary intervention or everything else? My contention is it's the social aspect. That social aspect is so key. Sorry to bring in the Brian's looking at me like, Tro, not another study.
No, I love it, Tro, because it's really important, because we focus so much on the diet. You say, okay, if you're stressed, intense, and you hate the world, if you're miserable every day of your life, if you hate your husband, those are things you got to work on. That's what's going to screw you up more than what you're eating. Yeah. But like you said, really, diabetics, when they get out of control, get depressed. It's not because they got depressed first and then they get out of control. That's the point, is poor dietary intake causes these things, and or contributes at least. And so once people start eating better, now they're not as stressed. I hear it every day.
Yeah.
The biggest thing, Troy, you were in on the Zoom meeting. We had all my patients, a bunch of my patients on the Zoom meeting. And the biggest thing they say is like, I'm not really hungry anymore. I used to be starving all day. Now I'm not hungry. So all the experts could say what they want in the clinic, in the mocked up hospital setting. This is real life. I had the lady's house almost burned down, and guess what? She lost 4 pounds in the process, right? Because
Wow.
she didn't turn to food as her stress relief. She said, oh, I'm going to go for a walk. I'm going to take care of myself. She changed her coping mechanism going through major life stress. So when I see people going through major life stress, a divorce or whatever they're going through, and they're still moving forward, I'm like, oh my gosh, you would have gained 20 pounds by now.
Yeah.
You would, this is what, and they know it. They were like, you're right, I would have. But, you know, it's things like that when you have that social support. And you know, the other big thing that you mentioned, Dr. Unwin, is the power of community. When we have a Zoom meeting, I have people who've been doing it for a month. People are just starting out, and they're all sharing. Here's what I do when I have a craving. Here's what I do now. And Tro and I could just sit back and watch.
Oh yeah.
Because they're the experts, because they're going through it. They understand.
Such easy medicine, yeah. We always say, you know, if someone asks a question, we say, oh, well, what would, you know, what does everybody think? And they nearly always answer it better than we could anyway. And I think it's more powerful coming from the peer group than it is from us, totally. And of course, there's the whole thing as well about, we're talking about sort of depression, isolation, stress. I mean, immunity is affected by all of those things, and then that can kind of loop back round as well, and that's probably related in some way. So everything's interrelated, isn't it? If you can get people moving in the right direction in whatever way, it starts that sort of virtuous cycle going on. If they can change the behavior, if they feel better, they're maybe connecting more to people. If connecting more to people, you know, their immunity improves. So it's kind of everything related. We run a little we've got a little practice walking group as well. I think I saw that you guys do that as well. So even though it was actually one of the patient's ideas, and she said, can we have should we start a walking group? So we're like, yeah. And there's a lovely park just nearby. So yeah, we run that on a Thursday lunchtime. It's another way for people to connect, and there's loads of evidence for vitamin D and getting out in nature and all of those things.
Well, plus you're with the tribe, and you're not embarrassed that you're the heaviest person, because there's a lot of heavy people there. So being in that group, some people say, well, some people are going to walk faster. Some people are in the slow group with me. And we talk about life, and people make connections, and, you know, their kids go to the same school. Oh, I didn't know that. Nice to meet you. And then you build this community. I have a kid that came to my practice, and he listens to the podcast, so I'll give him a little shout out, but he's 32 years old. He's been obese his entire life. He was over 400 pounds. The first time I met him, he was crying because he was in awe to be in my presence type thing, right? And so I started talking to him. I'm like, so tell me your journey. And he goes, well, I lost about 150 pounds or so. And I said, you're kidding me, right? I thought he was full of it. I go, you're kidding me, right? He goes, no, but I'm not sure. I go, how are you not sure? He goes, because my scale only went to 400 when I started. I'm like, you're kidding me, right? So this guy on his own, listened to the podcast and different things and educated himself, lost 150 pounds, and he's maintained it for 2 years or so. And you're like, oh my gosh, that is incredible. But his intake to the group and helping people and saying, look, and he's a simple guy. And he goes, this is what I did. I stopped eating the bad stuff. But that sense of community, that gives all of us hope. You think, wow, he didn't pay millions of dollars and go to all these psychological things. He just figured out, I wasn't happy and I had to do something.
Yeah. And how did you do that? How did you find that spark? You know, that's so fantastic, isn't it?
He just realized his life was bad enough where he had to make a change. You know, I think at some point you have to look at that, but something gave him hope to start that journey. Imagine having to, I mean, Tro, you don't have to imagine,
the podcast did it.
No, you know, can we talk about this, that motivational, how do we, I think my goal, and Brian, I know your goal is not only how do we get people who have no hope to have hope, no motivation to have motivation, and then how do we, the other side of it, which I know Brian has thought a lot about, which is how do we keep people there? How do we keep this young man, Brian, in your practice? How do we keep him there for the rest of his life? So Jen, do you have any thoughts? Like, how do we get them, how do we bring them up, and how do we keep them up?
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah. so bring them up is definitely those initial conversations about, you know, if we could kind of sprinkle you with miracle dust, what would you be hoping for? What would better look like for you? And those sorts of conversations to sort of get people thinking about possibilities, really. And then the fact that you're going to stick with them and you're going to guide them along the way, I think is incredibly powerful. And then the group, as we said, those sort of group interactions, it needs to be long term so that people can always come back. And I think you do remote monitoring, which of course we haven't really kind of got to here yet, but because David knows all his patients so well, if he's not seen someone for a bit, or if he sees that their prescriptions, you know, something's going on, you know, he'll call them up, or they have regular, say HbA1c, you can see it kind of drifting off, and he calls it carb creep. So if he sees a bit of carb creep, he'll kind of call someone back in and, you know, start those conversations again. And it is that long term, you know, you believe in it, they see other people doing it, it's just that long term. And then noticing that actually, how do they feel when they're kind of, you know, on with it and they're making progress. I think it's really important to focus on that as well, because then when it's almost inevitable that people slip, and we've got quite a few, you have as well, we call them triple dippers, who do really well and then do really badly, and they do really well and they do really badly, and then usually the third time they get it. We've got a few graphs that go like that, and I think it's helping people to reflect, you know, how much better they feel and they genuinely do when they're on the when they're following it, as opposed to when they don't. And I think it's, you know, we haven't really talked about the addiction piece yet, but I think that's incredibly powerful. And we do explain that to people, you know, it's not your fault. This stuff's really addictive. It is hard to give it up. It's not, you know, it's simple, but it's not easy. And then what are all the tricks that are going to help you keep going? You know, like you said, we say mixing with people, finding your tribe, cleaning up your home environment's massively important, and your shopping and your cooking, all of that, just all of those, you know, simple but cumulative habit changes that make such a difference. And I think understanding the physiology, you know, why are they making these changes, is because of the effect that sugar and insulin, you know, has on their condition, or whatever the condition they've got, or even if it's obesity, you know, David explains all about the physiology of insulin. And then I like to explain a bit about the addictive side of the sugar and how it kind of hijacks your reward centers. And I think people then get a bit, I quite like it when they get a bit cross about the whole thing, and they say, well, you know, oh God, I've been had, you know, this sugar has taken control of me, but I'm going to fight back, kind of thing. You know, I'm a bit cross that I've had the wrong advice all my life.
Trust me, that was exactly I remember sitting back thinking, if Jason Fung is right, if Dr. Unwin's right, I'm going to be really mad, because I've been doing the wrong thing, and I've been telling people the wrong thing based on what I was told. And it's so devastating. But when you see I was teasing your husband when he was on it. I said I was a better doctor than him because it took him 25 years to figure it out. It only took me 15. But of course I had his leadership to get me there. Right. But, you know, part of it is, you think of the miracle he's doing. I mean, your healthcare system, it makes me crazy. This guy's spending 10 minutes with people and changing their lives like he's doing. Tro and I are spending an hour and a half. We're spending, because of our style of medicine, we're outside the system. We get to spend a lot of time with people and really invest and understand them. Your husband is pulling a miracle off in 10 minutes. That is unheard of. Our system has to learn from this. I was so fresh. Tro knows me for 17 years. I was working 14-hour days, you know, just investing everything, working through lunch every day, getting home, missing dinner, not spending time with my wife and kids because I wanted to help people, but I couldn't in that system. I just couldn't. I saw it, but it was insanity because the crazy thing was the healthier my patients got, the less I would get paid. So the more time and money I invested of myself, the less I got paid. I said, well, this doesn't make any sense to me. Because it's not about the money ultimately, it's about helping people. And that's why what you're doing is so critical. When we see people getting better, that's the cure to physician burnout. That's why physicians are killing themselves at historic rates right now, because they're not helping people anymore. They're just seeing them get sicker and sicker. And then they take their frustrations out on me and Tro and fight with us on Twitter. It's like, spend your time more constructively and help people.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, one advantage of David's position is that he's been at that same practice with that same population for, I think it's about 30 years now. So he actually helped deliver some of the babies that are now grown up. So he's known the families. He knows the and that's a fantastic advantage. And you know, he has 10 minutes, but of course he can call people back and have another 10 minutes in a month or so. And so yeah, you're right. It is amazing that he manages to do it.
Well, he cheats the
people
system. He cheats the
people
system because
love
he's so darn
that.
nice. He's so darn
Yeah,
nice,
I
and
think
no one wants to disappoint him. That's why they love him. Like if he ever called me and said, "Brian, I'm disappointed in something," I would feel like I would be like this big. I would be like an inch tall because I upset Dr.
they
Unwin.
do it for him. They do, definitely, yeah. And they often say, you know, I knew I was coming back for my test, so you know, I had to, yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we hear
But,
that, and
you
that's
know,
why this routine follow-up. Like I'll see my patients every week; they don't go off the rails. My biggest frustration, I would see my diabetics by protocol every 3 months before. It's a total
yeah,
disaster. Like you said, Christmas comes and they're a total disaster. And then by this time,
yeah,
then they've given up hope. And then it takes 6 months again, their brain again, then they're ready. Then it's Christmas time again. It's the same
yes,
cycle.
yes, absolutely.
It just
No, it
doesn't
really,
work.
yeah, it really is. Yeah,
Can
yeah.
you talk a little bit about, and we touched upon it here and there, you've mentioned Joan Flynn, who wrote an amazing book on processed food addiction. I know you've worked with Bitten Johnson on sugar addiction. Can you talk about this concept of sugar addiction, food addiction, and you know, how is it, you kind of alluded to it when you said the patients like kind of get cross and they get mad because they finally put it all together. Somebody's been taking advantage of their impulses without them knowing it. So how do you bring this to their, you know, attention that, hey, look, there may be this process going on and you may not be knowing about it? And because it is kind of conspiratorial to say Nabisco, Kraft, they've all been, you know, seeking bliss point and they've been seeking recurring revenues and you're the vehicle. You know, that's a tough pill to swallow for most people. So how do you get them to buy into this concept of food addiction, sugar addiction? You know, I'm interested to hear about that.
Yeah. So I'm still learning. I think there's a massive amount still to learn about this whole idea. And I think we had a little debate on Twitter. Should we even call it food addiction, sugar addiction, processed food addiction? You know, there's lots of debates to be had. There's lots more science to be done. We're held back by the fact that food or sugar addiction isn't recognised formally as a disorder in DSM or ICD. And that means that there's less research funded and there's no clinical services. So if someone's suffering from a food addiction type problem, where do they go? I mean, there's obviously practitioners who are interested, but you know, there's certainly in the UK there's no services. I think there's only me and one other person who's been working with Bitten, and you know, we're not in the NHS providing services. And it again, it's seen as a bit quirky, isn't it? And if you mention it on Twitter, but a load of people pile in and say that doesn't exist. so we've got a way to go. But if you ask the general public, is sugar addiction a thing? 90% of people are going to say yes, aren't they? Say, oh yes, absolutely. If you say it's chocolate addictive, they will say yes. So I think the public recognise that it's a problem. So I often talk with people about the kind of mechanisms, really. So you know, we do know that when we sugar, obviously we get kind of rise in insulin. In the presence of insulin, various things happen, like tryptophan passes more easily into the brain than it would normally, and tryptophan makes serotonin, so you get a bit of a serotonin buzz. Also, we're pre-wired from an evolutionary sense to really like that sweet flavor because that's how we survive the winter. So I always say, well, I'm here because my ancestors were wherever there was sugar, they were seeking it out in the autumn so that they could survive the winter. You know, I definitely would have been one of those survivors because I could seek it out, and you know, would probably trample over anybody else to get to that blackberry bush, and would be eating my fill and kind of survive the winter. but that our bodies weren't designed, we didn't evolve for just the sheer amount of sugar that's kind of that's around now. So that we were so motivated to find it that we get that big dopamine hit. And people have usually heard that, sometimes they haven't, but usually they've heard of things like dopamine and serotonin. They know they're the feel good kind of neurotransmitters. So we get that big dopamine hit, and then we're really motivated. Dopamine's all about reward and motivation. We're really motivated to repeat whatever behavior was that came before that big dopamine hit of the frappuccino or the whatever it is that's kind of full of sugar that we've had. So we tend to kind of, our attention gets focused down on those things, and that's why I think people give up so many things in life when they have this tendency, and when they, you know, are kind of falling into that sugar addiction trap. The reward and motivation gets focused on food and sugar and kind of getting the next hit, and all of the other things that were previously rewarding in their lives sort of start falling away. So I think that's a big factor as well. Yeah, so I kind of talk about that, and then sometimes we do talk about things like Doritos and Pringles that were actually designed in the lab, you know, to have that bliss point, and we kind of look at all the ingredients, and people go, oh yeah, that makes sense, you can't just eat one. And they're even advertised, aren't they, that you can't eat one. That's even a kind of matter of pride in the advertisements, that you can't eat one of these things. So yeah, that is actually true. So don't eat one is the answer. Don't start, kind of thing.
Yeah, they're honest.
Yeah, really honest. Yeah, so yeah, talk about dopamine, serotonin. Yeah, the evolutionary thing, I think people do understand that argument as well. Yeah, and then we talk about the fact that we're so yeah, the other thing is, of course, the whole reward center is a very primitive part of the brain, and that's why you get that experience that nearly everybody's had, and I certainly had, and couldn't explain it to myself, where I'd wake up in the morning and say, I'm not having any of whatever it is today, X food. And then later on, I would actually watch my hand like an alien had taken it over and reach for whatever that thing was. And I'd be actually thinking, I don't want to eat that thing today, and I would still eat it. And that's because the primitive part of your brain has that ability to kind of override the frontal sort of intellectual part. So if you're cued, we're very cued by seeing food. And then the primitive part of your brain just takes over and kind of eats it. So that's why it's really good. We will say to people, you know, if you don't want to eat it, firstly, don't buy it, and secondly, obviously don't have it in the house, because willpower becomes exhausted usually towards the end of the day. If you get in from work, you're tired and you're a bit grumpy. Even if you started the day with the intention of not eating the Mars bars in the drawer, when you get home from work and you're exhausted, then you know that they're there, and it will be really easy just to reach them. So there's a kind of combination of bits of information and things that we talk about with people in terms of changing habits and thinking about sugar differently, to just give them some sense that it's not their fault that they've got into this problem, because that's how we were wired, and because of all these kind of feel-good hormones. But there are ways in which we can gain back control by how we behave. You have to act your way out of it. You're never going to think your way out of sugar addiction. You have to take action. You have to sort of trick it.
Yeah, and you have to realize there's an addiction there. I think that's it. And I think the other thing is, at the end of the day, people have made so many decisions. They've had so much stress. They've had all these things. They say, I'm just going to turn on the TV and relax. And then all of a sudden, every ad is for either a pharmaceutical or food. Food, soda, you know, here, this will make you happy, drink some of this, eat some of that. And we're at a major disadvantage, because that is when we're at our worst and our most vulnerable. And clearly they know that. They're not advertising just to sponsor your TV show. They want to make money on their investment. It's not that all food is bad. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying, you know, if we turn off the TV and go for a walk with our spouse, or go do something positive, we're going to be way better off in the long run in our weight loss journey and feeling healthier.
Building up those other activities that give you, so talking about how might you get dopamine, how might you get serotonin in other ways. There's loads of evidence-based ways, you know, like yoga's really good for serotonin. Anything kind of slightly goal-based, good for dopamine. I do a lot of knitting. You can probably see behind me loads of wool. So, you know, it's
Yeah,
finding
whatever it
things
is,
that
right? Collecting
are
rocks,
pleasurable.
doing whatever you do that gives you that
Whatever,
peace.
I've
whatever
never
floats your boat.
I've never met somebody who said, oh, I went and exercised, or oh, I went and prayed, or I went and meditated. Oh, you know, I laughed with my family and I regret it, you know, but certainly I drank this and I ate that and I regretted it. So you're absolutely right. Replace what you can't restrict. If you need those happy hormones, you better find a way to get it, because otherwise they're going to get you. You know, I 100% agree. Wow. Just the amazing insight coming right now. It's like, you know, this is going to be a bombshell for our listeners.
Just,
You know,
I just probably
absolutely.
should just say, not everybody is a sugar. So I've been working with Bitten on, you know, how you kind of assess to see if someone's really falls into that category. Have they actually got, in a sense, a substance use disorder? And that is a proportion of the population. I don't think we quite know yet. Maybe 10%, something like that. Most people have had, because of the world we live in, have been eating too much sugar and have kind of fallen into those habits, and can probably kind of rein it back if they really think about it. Those of us who are proper sugar addicts really just need to abstain, exactly like alcohol. We can't moderate, we can't control our relationship with sugar. Just don't have
you think
it.
it's
And that's
10%. Let me tell you, you think it's 10%. I'm going to tell you, walking into my clinic, when we look at ACE positive scores, 60%. When we look at YFAS, like scoring highly, we're talking about 60%. When we talk about binge eating scales, we're talking about 60% scoring very, very highly on these. So I think it's more of a, I think it's unrecognized. Yeah, certainly it is, because we talk about it, you know. So there's a self-selection, but I think it's got to be more than 10%.
Probably,
you know?
I was being conservative because, you know, because so many people go, oh, it doesn't even exist at all. Yeah, it probably is more than that.
Why do you think that is, by the way? Because I polled Twitter, I got about 1,500 responses. 95% of people said they believe that's either themselves or in somebody they know that there is the concept of food addiction. So why do you think that, you know, when you poll dietitians, 5% think there's food addiction, and the public 95% believes in food addiction? Why do you think that is?
Oh gosh, that's such a good question. I think because they've been taught that, and that's because, oh, should we get our tin hats back on? Because
I was thinking the same thing.
The education of healthcare professionals has been a little bit hijacked, I think.
Well,
perhaps.
Well, here's my other idea, and I'm gonna run this by you and see what you think. I looked at the prevalence of actual anorexia in registered dietitians, and the prevalence of anorexia is about 10 times the normal population in dietitians versus the normal. So maybe they're just dealing with the other side of the spectrum. Okay, they're very, you know, and so I think that it's along with not being able to personally identify because. You know, maybe they're not obese and sugar addicted, you know, they have the complete opposite problem, which is food. And, you know, they need to not exclude food because of severe anorexia or treatment for anorexia. I wonder if that's part of it. And then on top of this, their education or brainwashing, whatever you want to call it.
And I think, you know, some people who are actually sugar addicted are very defensive and say that it's not a problem. So it's kind of one side of it. And then I think the other side is if you're not, like if you don't struggle with alcohol moderation, for example, it's quite hard to understand how somebody would. So I've, you know, there are people in the family who just don't get that you can't just have a bit of cake, you know, and they'll still say, oh, just a little bit, you know.
You don't tell your alcoholic friends, just have a little shot with me. You don't do that.
Yeah, it's your birthday. You know, I think some people just don't, because they don't experience it, they can't empathize with it.
Yeah, I think that's a very key thing. And not only do the dietitians not empathize with it and they can't relate to it, but in fact, they have the opposite problem, where because of self-image issues or maybe excessive dieting or whatever it was that led them to be a dietitian, they in fact have a problem eating food, right? They literally have a problem eating food, maybe because of self-image or whatever. And so their problem is the exact opposite. right? So, you know, and this is like I know it's a generalization, but they certainly suffer at a multiple of the general population of these issues. And I think that's the combination of their education and that, you know, who knows? Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm crazy. Maybe I've got to put the tinfoil hat back on and, you know.
Dr. Unwin, Tro was mean and put a back-to-back interview on us. So we have someone waiting and we're going to get yelled at. What do you tell, thank you so much for joining us. And what do you tell that person who's lost all hope? I want to close with that because I think there's so many people out there, and I see it on Twitter, I see it in the world, that have just lost hope. This young guy who's on a ventilator right now, what do you tell that person who right now is listening that says, you know, life's terrible, it's never going to be better, I'm never going to lose weight, you know?
Oh, I think really the first thing has to be to reach out, doesn't it? Try and find someone to talk to. You know, definitely don't sit there alone and feel hopeless. Please give those of us that want to help other people a chance. You know, go and talk to somebody, reach out, and ask for that help, because to feel hopeless, it must mean that at some level you have a sense of what could be better. So in a sense that, you know, there's always a hope for something better. It's just that they've given up believing that it's possible. So, you know, reach out to someone who can help you to sort of start on that journey. Look for someone who's been in your position and is further down the road. Those are the best people to help you lift you up.
Yeah, and maybe even looking at someone behind you in that situation and say, let me pull you along and help you, and you get hope in helping others. That's why we love the community.
Bitten calls it starfish throwing. So it's, you pick one, there's loads of starfish on the beach who are, you know, need to get back in the sea because the tide's gone out. If each of us just keeps picking up the starfish and throwing them back in the sea, that's all we can do. We can't save, each of us can't save everybody, but if we can, you know, every person that we help is a starfish back in the sea.
Amen.
Wow, that's awesome. Yeah, that's so true. You help who you can. You do what you can, right?
Do what you can. Yeah.
And how do people get in touch with you if they want to get in touch with you?
Oh, well, probably the easiest way is Twitter. So it's @Jen_Unwin.
Yeah, you're doing great work. You and your husband are really role models, and good things will happen. You know, I mean, there's always these setbacks because of money and politics and all this crazy stuff, but the people who need it and the people who get it are the word's out. The genie's out of the bottle, as I say. I mean, all of us get it, and we're spreading it to our patients, and you're helping a lot of people.
We're a long way from where we were 8 years ago. We were the only people in the UK. Now there's at least 63 GPs who've signed a letter to NICE about the infographics.
I've signed
it too.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yep. I'm one of the 5,000 signatures I know. What are we at now? How many signatures are we at now?
Oh, I think it's about 7. I think they're going to send it in with this covering letter. I think it's about 7,000 now.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Guys, before you send it in, guys, go out and support both Dr. Unwins. Sign this letter that you know, demands that we get these infographics back. You know, the way it was taken off, it was nefarious. There were threats in emails sent to NHS by journalists and NICE, and thank you for correcting me. And it's just nefarious how it happened, you know, and convenient timing that it all happened before they rolled out the shakes and the soups. So please support them.
Thank you.
Yes, Dr. Unwin, thank you so much for joining us. Tro, do you want to close us, man?
No, this is just like my heroes. Like I have the best job. I get to work with one of my mentors and heroes, Brian, and I get to interview mentors and heroes. So I'm the luckiest man alive.
Yeah, we're both so fortunate. Dr. Unwin, it's an absolute honor to have you on, and thank you for giving us all hope, really. You know, I think, you know, I saw someone on Twitter the other day that said, if you're the smartest person in the room, you're in the wrong room, right? So I feel that way when I'm around you both, right? Really, for everyone, it's just that we're all learning, we're all moving forward, and we're helping a lot of people. So everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for your support. We couldn't do it without you. And you know, hopefully, I know this will impact you. This is really, really critical stuff. So I'm just waiting for the book to come out from the Unwins so that we can have them back on.
I can't wait for
to
that.
Get the word out.
I'll be the first one. I'll be the first one to buy it.
Yeah, me
I hope
too.
it's in the works. I hope it's in the works.
Yeah, there's a couple of ideas bubbling along.
All right. If we can help you, let us know.
Okay. Thank you
All right.
so much. I really enjoyed it. Thank you.
Thank you.